What happens when a 33-year-old political outsider doesn't just win against the establishment, but then threatens to take down the most powerful Democrat in the House of Representatives? This is the story of how Zohran Mamdani just sent shockwaves through the Democratic Party establishment, and how House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries responded with what can only be described as a political declaration of war. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this clash isn't just about two politicians from New York. It's about the future of the Democratic Party itself. But first, let me tell you about the moment that changed everything. June 24th, 2025. Election night in New York City. The polls had just closed, and political insiders were preparing for what they thought would be a predictable outcome. Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, was supposed to cruise to victory in the Democratic mayoral primary. He had the name recognition, the establishment backing, and the political machine behind him. This was supposed to be his comeback story, but then the results started coming in. Cuomo had obvious weaknesses as a candidate. He resigned as governor in 2021 after credible accusations of sexual harassment. Yet the Democratic establishment had rallied behind him anyway, believing that his political brand and experience would carry him through. They were wrong. In what can only be described as a political earthquake. Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old state assemblyman from Queens that most Americans had never heard of, didn't just win the primary. He crushed it. But here's where the story gets interesting, because winning was just the beginning. Within hours of his victory, something unprecedented happened. Sen. Chuck Schumer and Representative Hakeem Jeffries, New York City natives who lead their party's caucuses in each chamber of Congress, quickly issued statements saying they had spoken to Mamdani and praising the campaign he ran. They stopped short of endorsing him. Wait, let me repeat that. The two most powerful Democrats in Congress from New York just watched a member of their own party win the primary for mayor of their home city, and they refused to endorse him. That's when you know something bigger is happening. To understand why, Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic establishment are so threatened by Zohran Mamdani. You need to understand who Mamdani really is. This isn't just any politician. Mamdani is a proud democratic socialist who has built his entire political career on challenging the very people who now control the Democratic Party. Born in Uganda and raised in Queens, Mamdani represents everything the establishment fears: youth, authenticity, and a willingness to call out corruption wherever he sees it, even in his own party. Despite his decisive primary victory and impressive campaign, many Democratic lawmakers are refusing to endorse Zohran Mamdani and are spreading baseless lies and smears in the process. Think about that for a moment. A candidate from their own party just won a decisive primary victory, and instead of rallying behind him, Democratic lawmakers are actively spreading lies about him. But Mamdani's victory wasn't just a local upset. It was a message to the entire Democratic establishment. Your time is up. And that's when things got really interesting, because within days of Mamdani's victory, his allies started making moves that would send shockwaves through the halls of Congress. July 9th, 2025, just 2 weeks after Mamdani's stunning primary victory, CNN published a report that would change everything. Democratic socialists in New York City, emboldened by Zohran Mamdani's mayoral primary win, are warning that they may go after 5 House incumbents next. And Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader at the top of their list, is daring them to try. Let me break this down for you. Mamdani's allies weren't just celebrating their victory, they were planning their next moves. And their next target wasn't some random congressman. It was Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader and one of the most powerful Democrats in America. This wasn't just political positioning. This was a declaration of war against the Democratic establishment. But here's what makes this even more explosive. Mamdani's far-left allies want to primary Hakeem Jeffries and other NYC Democrats. And they're not just talking about it, they're actively planning for it. Think about what this means. For decades, the Democratic Party has been controlled by the same establishment figures, the same power brokers, the same political machines. And now a group of young Democratic socialists, fresh off their biggest victory ever, are saying, "We're coming for all of you." Now, if you know anything about Hakeem Jeffries, you know he didn't get to where he is by backing down from a fight. House Minority Leader brushed off recent CNN report that said allies of Zohran Mamdani are looking to primary him in New York. But Jeffries' public dismissal was just the beginning. Behind the scenes, his team was preparing for political warfare, but a senior political advisor to Jeffries is promising that anyone who tries to oust the top Democrat in the House in next year's primaries will face a forceful and unrelenting response. Forceful and unrelenting. Those aren't the words of someone who's worried about a primary challenge. Those are the words of someone who's preparing to destroy their opponents. Jeffries on Wednesday dismissed the primary threats, telling CNN that he has no idea what these people are talking about. But Jeffries' senior advisor, Andrew Richardson, issued a stern warning, saying that if Mamdani's allies go forward with a primary fight, our response will be forceful and unrelenting. But Jeffries' team didn't stop there. They went nuclear. A rift erupted between Zohran Mamdani's leftist Democratic Socialist allies and House Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, with threats of running primaries against each other. And then came the personal attacks. Jeffries' team started calling Mamdani's allies team gentrification, a particularly cutting insult in a city where gentrification has displaced thousands of working-class families. This wasn't just political opposition. This was character. Assassination. Now, if the Democratic establishment thought they could intimidate Zohran Mamdani with threats and name-calling, they clearly hadn't been paying attention to his campaign. This is the same person who took on Andrew Cuomo and won. The same person who built a grassroots movement from nothing and defeated the entire New York political machine. Did they really think he was going to back down from Hakeem Jeffries? The answer came quickly. Instead of responding with the typical political deflection, Mamdani and his allies doubled down. They made it clear that not only were they not intimidated by Jeffries' threats, but they were more motivated than ever. Political upstart Zohran Mamdani secured another key endorsement Wednesday, earning the support of the United Federation of Teachers, New York City's most powerful teachers union, showing that while the Democratic establishment was trying to isolate him, he was actually building more support. But here's where Mamdani's response gets really interesting. Instead of engaging in a back and forth with Jeffries directly, he did something much more strategic. He kept winning. While Jeffries was making threats, Mamdani was securing endorsements. While Jeffries was name-calling, Mamdani was building coalitions. While Jeffries was focused on the past, Mamdani was focused on the future. And that's when the establishment realized they had a real problem. This clash between Jeffries and Mamdani isn't just about two politicians from New York. It's about something much bigger, the future of the Democratic Party. For decades, the Democratic Party has been controlled by the same establishment figures who prioritize fundraising over policy, who choose compromise over conviction, who value access over activism. But Mamdani's victory represents something different. It represents a new generation of Democrats who aren't interested in playing by the old rules. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, DNY, urged New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani to address his thoughts on the anti-Israel slogan, even on contentious issues like Israel-Palestine, where the Democratic establishment has traditionally tried to avoid taking clear positions. Mamdani has been willing to speak his mind, regardless of the political consequences. This is what terrifies the establishment. It's not just that Mamdani won, it's that he won by being authentic, by refusing to compromise his values, by building a movement based on genuine grassroots support rather than corporate donations and political connections. And now, that movement is setting its sights on the highest levels of Democratic leadership. But just when you think this story couldn't get any more dramatic, the stakes got even higher. Trump's comments come after. Nick mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani won the city's primary election. President Trump himself weighed in, suggesting a federal takeover of New York City if Mamdani becomes mayor. Think about that for a moment. A sitting president is so concerned about a local election that he's threatening federal intervention. This isn't just about New York politics anymore. This is about the future of American democracy itself. The establishment Democrats like Jeffries find themselves in an impossible position. They're being attacked from the left by Democratic socialists like Mamdani, and they're being attacked from the right by Trump and the Republicans. And in the middle of all this, Mamdani just keeps winning. NYC mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani joined the UFT president and other members Wednesday morning to talk about their endorsement, while everyone else is focused on the drama. Mamdani is focused on building the coalition he needs to actually govern. So what does this all mean for the future of the Democratic Party? The clash between Jeffries and Mamdani represents a fundamental choice that Democrats are going to have to make. Do they want to be the party of the establishment, or do they want to be the party of change? For too long, Democratic leaders have tried to have it both ways. They've talked about progressive values while taking corporate donations. They've promised change while maintaining the status quo. They've claimed to represent working people while hobnobbing with Wall Street executives. But Mamdani's victory shows that voters are tired of the double talk. They want authenticity. They want leaders who will fight for them, not just talk about fighting for them. And that's why Jeffries is so threatened, because he represents everything that Mamdani is fighting against: the compromise, the calculation, the careful political positioning that prioritizes staying in power over actually using that power. The question is, will other Democrats follow Mamdani's lead, or will they stick with the establishment? But here's what makes this story even more compelling. Mamdani isn't alone. Across the country, there's a growing movement of young, progressive Democrats who are challenging the establishment and winning. From Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York to Cori Bush in Missouri to Jamal Bowman in New York, a new generation of Democrats is rising, and they're not just winning elections. They're changing the conversation. Issues that were considered too radical just a few years ago, like Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, and defunding the police, are now mainstream positions within the Democratic Party. The establishment tried to marginalize these voices, but they couldn't stop them. And now, with Mamdani's victory, the movement has its biggest win yet, because winning the mayor's race in New York City isn't just about local politics. It's about proving that the progressive movement can win anywhere against anyone. Asterisk, but if you think this story ends with Mamdani's primary victory, you're wrong. In many ways, the real battle is just beginning, because now that Mamdani has proven he can win, the establishment is going to pull out all the stops to make sure he doesn't succeed as mayor. They're going to try to sabotage his transition. They're going to try to undermine his policy agenda. They're going to try to make sure he fails so they can say, "See, we told you so." But here's what they don't understand. Mamdani didn't get this far by backing down from a fight. He got this far by building a movement that's bigger than any individual politician, and that movement isn't going anywhere. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, DNY, acknowledged on Sunday that he has not yet endorsed Zohran Mamdani for mayor. of New York City and face questioning as to why he has yet to back the progressive candidate in his home district. The fact that Jeffries is still refusing to endorse Mamdani shows you everything you need to know about where the Democratic establishment stands. That this story isn't just about American politics. It's about a global movement of young progressives who are challenging the political establishment everywhere. From Jeremy Corbyn in the UK to Podemos in Spain to the Greens in Germany. There's a worldwide shift toward more progressive, more authentic, more grassroots-driven politics. And Mamdani's victory is part of that global movement. Mamdani, the 33-year-old Ugandan-born Democratic Socialist Assemblyman from Queens, sent political shockwaves not just through New York, but through the entire political establishment. The fact that an immigrant, a person of color, a democratic socialist, could win such a decisive victory in one of the world's most important cities sends a message to political establishments everywhere. Your time is up, but let's not forget that behind all the political drama, there are real people with real stakes in this fight. For Hakeem Jeffries, this isn't just about politics. It's about his legacy. He spent his entire career building relationships, accumulating power, positioning himself to be the next Speaker of the House when Democrats regain control. And now, a 33-year-old outsider is threatening to upend all of that. From Mamdani, the stakes are even higher. He's not just fighting for his own political future. He's fighting for the future of his community, his city, and his vision of what America could be. The difference is that Jeffries is fighting to preserve the status quo, while Mamdani is fighting to change it. And in politics, the person fighting for change usually has the advantage because they have something the establishment doesn't: passion, authenticity, and the energy of people who believe in something bigger than themselves. One of the most interesting aspects of this story is how the media has covered it. The mainstream media has largely tried to frame this as a story about far-left Democrats threatening the moderate establishment. But that framing misses the point entirely. This isn't about left versus right. It's about authenticity versus calculation. It's about grassroots versus establishment. It's about the future versus the past. Mamdani's positions aren't far left. They're popular. Medicare for all is supported by a majority of Americans. The Green New Deal is supported by a majority of Americans. Higher taxes on the wealthy are supported by a majority of Americans. The only people who think these positions are far left are the political and media establishment, who have been out of touch with regular Americans for so long that they've forgotten what regular Americans actually want. At its core, this fight between Jeffries and Mamdani is about economics. Jeffries represents the wing of the Democratic Party that's comfortable with corporate donations, that believes in working within the existing economic system, that thinks the best way to help working people is to make incremental changes around the edges. Mamdani represents the wing that believes the entire system is rigged against working people and needs to be fundamentally restructured. He's talking about things like public banking, community land trusts, worker cooperatives, ideas that would fundamentally shift economic power from the wealthy to working people. That's why the establishment is so scared. It's not just that Mamdani might win elections. It's that he might actually implement policies that would threaten their economic interests. So where does this all lead? The confrontation between Jeffries and Mamdani is really a confrontation between two different visions of the Democratic Party's future. Jeffries' vision is one where Democrats continue to be the party of careful compromise, where they take corporate money and try to balance the interests of their donors with the interests of their voters. Mamdani's vision is one where Democrats become the party of working people, where they reject corporate money and fight unapologetically for policies that benefit the majority of Americans. The question is, which vision will prevail? If Mamdani succeeds as mayor, if his allies succeed in primarying establishment Democrats like Jeffries, then the Democratic Party could be on the verge of a fundamental transformation. But if the establishment succeeds in stopping Mamdani, if they succeed in marginalizing the progressive movement, then the Democratic Party could be stuck in the same old patterns that have left so many Americans feeling betrayed and abandoned. This story isn't really about Hakeem Jeffries versus Zohran Mamdani. It's about the future of American democracy. For too long, American politics has been controlled by a small group of wealthy donors and established politicians who are more interested in maintaining their own power than actually solving problems. But Mamdani's victory shows that it's possible to challenge that system and win. He didn't win by compromising his values. He didn't win by taking corporate money. He didn't win by playing the old political games. He won by building a genuine grassroots movement, by speaking authentically about the issues that matter to regular people, by refusing to back down when the establishment tried to intimidate him. And now that movement is spreading. The question isn't whether Mamdani will succeed as mayor. The question is whether the American people will continue to support candidates who fight for them, or whether they'll go back to supporting politicians who just talk about fighting for them, because that's what this is really about, the difference between talking about change and actually fighting for it. And after watching Zohran Mamdani take on the entire Democratic establishment and win, I think we know which side has the momentum. The only question now is, how far will this movement go? Asterisk, because something tells me this is just the beginning of a much bigger story.